Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Message from Heaven podcast. My name is Medium Bonnie Page, and I have a wonderful guest here today, Gordon Ellison. And Gordon lives in Canada. And we're going to have a conversation about life and death. And he is an amazing medium. And Gordon, I'm going to let you tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Gordon Ellison. I'm from Fort Erie, Ontario, in Canada. I have been studying mediumship since I was about 21, 20 years of age. Had some experiences with life death myself, with crossing over. And I've had this ability, I would call it, not a gift, I call it ability, since I was about 7 years old, 8 years old, seeing things and other people not seeing things. Later on in college, I thought maybe I had schizophrenia, so I went to study psychology to try and think I was not so crazy, but it sounds that I'm pretty normal to boot.
Well, we're so happy to have you here and to have a conversation with me for all our viewers today. And, Gordon and I was just talking to each other, and we've trained with a lot of the same, I kind of call them big or celebrity mediums that have had TV shows and everything. But they were wonderful. And I think that we got a really wonderful wide variety of training with them, don't you,
Mhm.
Gordon?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. They kind of set the pathway for us to follow with every other medium.
And I know you probably do this work as well as why I do this work. It's a lot of healing work for
Hmm.
people. And I loved how you said that you went to school for psychology and everything because I did too. So I started laughing when you said that. However, my story is a little different, and my viewers know that my mom was a medium, and my grandma and my great grandmother. So when I was growing up and I was seeing the spirits like you were, my mom could actually link in and see who I was seeing, Gordon.
Oh, very nice.
So mine didn't get pushed down, but I didn't use my mediumship till later in life when my son went into boot camp into the army after he graduated. And that's when it just started becoming stronger and stronger for
Mhm.
me. So, Gordon, when would you say that your mediumship like started to blossom?
I would say I mean, besides seeing things, growing up and such, when I was 17, 18 years old, I used to have a gentleman come to me on my birthday. He was a spirit, and he used to tell me, when you're 26, you're going to die. Every year would come to me on my birthday and tell me, and it got to the point where I was 19. I'm like, yeah, I know I'm going to die, blah, 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 right? And at 26, he didn't show up. And I was working under a car. I had longer hair, of course, back then. And the car fell on me. But at that time, the whole transition, I blanked out. I was on an airplane. And I remember prior to hearing my name being called to get out under the car, long story short, there's a gentleman coming up and asked me if what I want to have. I said, well, have a soda. And I thought I was going to say soda, but instead I said, I think I'll stay. And then the car fell, and my baby brother, who I never met, who died of crib death, was in front of me and said, hey, you're going to be okay. Just vanished. At that point, I thought there's something to this. I made a decision, and I better start looking into doing this a little bit more seriously. So that's where it set off everything for all the training and everything we've done over the years.
So when you were talking, I was getting goosebumps all over me. So spirit just blending that, that story is so strong for you. So
Hmm.
the car landed on you and you actually were gone for a little bit?
Well, the car didn't actually. What happened was my sister was in there having a fun time with her friends. I don't drink, but they're drinking in there, and I was working on a car and on an idler arm that moves the wheels. And I heard my name being called 3 times, and it seems kind of, all the 3 time thing, but it was called to the point where someone was saying, get out from under there. And I was looking and there's nobody there. And I felt someone grab my feet at the end, and that's when I blanked out. Then I was on the plane. As I came to, I felt my back burning. I was already out from under the car, and the car slammed down. Well, I had the car up on 2 jacks and a tire. I know how to do it. And at that point, it took me 2 weeks to go back in the garage. But in those 2 weeks, I was thinking very hard on what I should do in this life. And
But
this was
you
the
were
time.
so saved by angels or your guide,
Absolutely. Yeah,
right? I
absolutely. My
mean,
baby brother did a good job.
when they and your brother, right? And
Hmm.
yeah, and so that's one of the things that, we're going to cover today, a little bit of your spirit team there. So,
Hmm.
it's sad that your brother passed when he was little, you said?
Yeah, I died a crib death a long time ago. I was adopted out from my grandmother, and my mother was at the time she was living somewhere else in Moncton, New Brunswick, in Canada, and he was born. I'm the oldest of three of us, and he ended up passing away before I ever got to meet him. But at that time, that's when I knew. I mean, without a fact. And he said, "I'm Roger. I know who he was. I know it." And I just kind of smiled, put both hands on him. He's gonna be okay, and vanished.
And so it sounds like your little brother became a very active spirit guide for you
Yes,
in your spirit team.
absolutely.
So I actually have a brother in heaven as well that I hear all the time, and I see him, and he teaches me so many things. And sorry to my viewers if you're hearing my little Pomeranian bark, which she ran under a table, so she's like a little guard dog. Hopefully, she'll quiet down in a minute. Um, so, Gordon, I write a column for the Boston Herald, and I'm in different papers every week. I have a weekly column, which I love because it shows that regular people like me and you, you're interested in the spiritual world and what happens, and
Hmm.
the spirit point of view. So I've written down some questions here that people have asked me, and I want to ask your opinion on them.
Okay.
So the first one, Gordon, I wrote down is, I get asked a lot if it matters whether when you pass, like people will come to me, my mom wanted to be cremated, but we buried her.
Hmm.
Does it make a difference to the soul if you're cremated or you're buried?
Not at all, not in the least. I've had many spirits that crossed over, and they've had an itinerary of what they wanted with their ending result with everything. And finding that they realize that they wasted so much time thinking about the end process. And it's more for those people on the other side. As Samuel, one of my guys, told me, he said, "You do a celebration of life, do while people are here. It makes the nonsense to them why you don't, wait till they're gone, right?" But there should be no guilt that you've done a certain different thing than they wanted. What they had, because we get to the point where we're bound by we're going to think they're angry with us, and they never are. They never are. They just want us to know they love us, and when they cross over, people. I was at a funeral one time, and I don't go to many because of what we do. But one of the guys, Samuel, I work with, he says we cry because of the love they left us and they give us, and they're holding on to us. They're there for us. So that crying is not about missing them. It's about sharing the memories we have with them. And
Mhm.
that's what they're telling us.
That's beautiful. So I always do tell my clients, no, it's
Mm,
not whether they were buried or cremated. Their soul
right.
went to heaven and their soul is still there with you. Um, I do want to ask you a question though, because I was doing a gallery back in Massachusetts in May. And I had a lot of people around me in the end, and somebody, without telling me, put like a little jar of makeup in my palm of my hand, and I went like this. They were the ashes of this lady's
Wow.
son, and I actually felt like that energy in there. I
Hmm.
Can you explain that?
You can feel the weight of people, like in that, like that same type of situation, because the energy that's involved in there, that person so intentionally is concentrated on that person, that spirit that's passed, and especially with the spirit beside them, that's acknowledgement for them that this is me, this is how I feel. And it's not so much a weight in the physical sense, but it's a heavy weight to feel on your body, your persona. So your spiritual energy kind of involves with that person in front of there to make that connection. It's kind of mix and cake almost, if you look at it that way. And that energy gives that vibration up that we can pick up, especially people who are clairsentients and don't realize it. When they touch an object or something, they get that jolt sometimes. Or when I'm doing readings, I get pulled to a different place. I'm out of the room I'm in. You know, so it's not uncommon. It's a way for spirit to connect and say, this is me.
Because I felt the lady put something in my hand, and then she goes, "Do you know what that is?" And I looked down, and I was like, "A young boy." And she said,
Hmm.
"Yes, that's my son. I carry him with me,"
Hmm.
in her pocketbook.
Wow. Wow.
But I couldn't believe I could feel that energy
Mhm.
in the ashes of him.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I had
It's
never happened to me before.
yeah, because she's carrying the energy for him. It's almost like her. It's like that psychometry reading, right? Because that information just floods through psychically, and there's that mediumship connection that we can pick up on. You know, that's through there, right? So yeah, it's not uncommon.
So that was kind of like feeling the energy of her son then within those ashes.
Hmm. Yes, yes, absolutely. It's not her son that's the ashes, but the energy around it.
Yeah, because I couldn't believe it lit up my hand,
Hmm.
you know? Yeah.
Right.
So what do you think about what we call the hour from like 3 to 4 in the morning, Gordon?
Oh, I love those hours. Those hours are really interesting. They call it the dead zone. You know, you see on television shows I've done, and paranormal shows and such, and they call it the dead zone. The reason why they call it dead zone because we're not integrated with our daily activity. We don't have everything going on. We don't have the blinders on, so we kind of like let go of everything. So we open ourselves up at that time. And in Ojibwe teachings, First Nations teachings, we talk about doing ceremonies at night where they used to think we're hiding things. But because we believe in the spirit world at night is in their daytime, we want to involve them. So to us, it's that connection. So it's easy for spirits to, I want to say, slip in a sense to connect with us, whether in our dream state, our half awakened state, or even when you're in a daydream, they'll come in and you'll pick up that connection. I always tell people there's two rules of thought when you come to work with spirit. First rule of thought's always spirit. Fast you can snap your fingers. Second rule of thought's ours. We try to make sense of it and we lose a connection.
So I love that for years, that's kind of like the spiritual hour. And I always would wake up, that I would
Hmm.
always like become awake and need a cup of tea or whatever, to the
Yeah.
point where my husband would get up in the night and say, "Oh, did spirits wake you up again?" Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
but I'm going to be honest with you, Gordon. I just learned something from you that I've never learned. And that is, are you saying our nighttime is the spirit world's daytime?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
explain that a little
That's how we
bit.
in
I've
our
never heard anybody else say that, but I love
right.
that.
Well,
And it
in my
makes
culture,
so much sense.
exactly right. In our culture, being a First Nations Ojibwe, in our teachings we talk about ceremonies, and in the RCMP long time ago used to think that we're trying to hide things, but what's explained is that they see things. Being First Nations people mainly see things as opposites of everything. So our daytime is their nighttime. Our nighttime is their daytime. So they want to incorporate when they did ceremonies. They always wanted to incorporate spirit to be welcome into that circle. You know what I mean?
So when
So,
we're kind of sleeping, you're saying that heaven or the spirit world, that's like their daytime, and maybe that's why they're so active.
yep, yep,
See what you
absolutely,
learned? See, I
absolutely.
had never heard that, but I love that, Gordon. I'm writing that down.
Hey, you can keep it for you, absolutely.
Absolutely. See, so Gordon, what do you think about people ask me, can the spirit world or our loved ones see and hear everything that we do?
Yeah, they do because they can do what they call bilocating. They can be in two places at once. Our soul, as I explained to my wife, said, "You're not my soulmate, but my soulmate is myself on the other side." That's where that spirit connection is from. And that's how we have the ability to bilocate. When we have that opportunity, when, yeah, sorry, I'm having someone coming in. I don't want to
It's
talk to them.
okay.
When we're having someone that's coming in there, the ability to connect with that is not so. Give me your question again. Hang on a second. Sorry, I'm someone stuffed in here. I don't want to talk to them right now.
So my question was, can the spirit world hear and see
Yes. Okay.
everything we're doing? People get really caught up in that. Can someone see me in the shower? Are they seeing me have
Oh,
a
I see what you're
are
saying.
they
Okay.
seeing me have a bad day? Are they hearing me say something that might not be that nice about them? Like if you grew up with a
Right.
mom that didn't care and you walked around saying, "Oh, I had a mom that didn't care about me." How do you think the spirit world, our loved ones, feel about different things?
The first thing that happens is when we cross over, we drop most of the physical characteristics. We drop the anger, we drop the the disgruntledness and the impeaching thoughts. So they never want to come and give you scorecards when you're in the shower. They never want to be with you. That's your intimate moment. That they know is private moments, and they respect that, right? They're our loved ones. So they don't want to come back and pull you up against the wall type thing, right? But they have the ability to connect all the times, especially when we're going through a lot of hard times, a lot of stress. When we don't when we go through and they keep popping into our heads and we're thinking, oh, we're missing mom, we're missing dad, that's them saying hello. One of the things I always tell people, I say, when spirit want to connect, and they say, well, how come I can't connect with mom or dad, or and so forth. I say, well, because you're concentrating on the death date. They know they died. You keep giving them that thought. Don't remind them of that. They want
I
to share
never
the memories.
concentrate on that day.
Yeah, I said share
Yeah.
the memories. That's what they want, because we can only make memories here. We can't make them on the other side. So that's
I
what they
actually
have to
still
watch us
sing
live.
happy birthday when their birthday comes up.
Absolutely. We're born in and born out. We don't have any birthdays between. We're only 2 years old.
So some clients have asked me before if they were upset with someone that passed to the higher side, um, what does that person in heaven feel about it? And I know you said, they kind of get rid of that or whatever.
Mhm.
I also feel like they see the bigger picture.
They do, yes.
And your loved ones might have hurt your feelings here
Hmm.
on earth, and it's something that you carry, but it's something that they might have a regret about.
There's a word that they use, like everything in life, we have words reminded to us, like everything must be broken, everything, always break. When they talk about that with spirit coming in, it's interesting how they come into the fold with things, and when they come into a reading, they'll bring what I call two suitcases. One suitcase of how they were here, the characteristics, mannerisms, and their anger, what they thought, and they'll bring a second suitcase and say, this is how I am now, because some spirits have to go through a transition to realize they don't carry those memories, right?
Mhm.
And those people, when they think that so and so didn't like them or didn't like that, they'll tell them, yeah, in the physical I didn't like that. And sometimes some clients will get people don't want to come in because they're, like you said, the hard people in their lives that cause trouble, right? But they're the pushers. They have a job. Everybody has a job to do in a situation where they play, where they either push you in a direction or pull you away from a direction. And when we get on the other side, we all congregate together and understand what we played in each other's roles, right?
Absolutely. I don't know how you feel about this, but I actually saw my dad having his life review, just a piece of it with his guides.
Mm-hmm.
So the way Spirit teaches me is they'll give me a glimpse into heaven with something that's happening with my loved ones in heaven. Um, and so I heard my dad saying, I need to say I'm sorry. And it wasn't to me. And I heard who he needed to say that he was sorry to.
Mm-hmm.
So I do feel like when you have a life review, from seeing that there are things that we can regret that we've done here, or if we've hurt someone. But
Mm-hmm.
I think the spirit world, your loved ones, really try to get the message to you
Yeah.
of how they feel now in heaven, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because this is our life's journey, right? And
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
you know what James used to say, James von Prague and all the big, we're a soul having a human experience.
I love that.
Then
I
we
love
get back to heaven where we are a soul, and we're like, oh, you get to see the whole big picture of your life and what happened and why.
that's so true. That is so true. Yeah. And then the whole concept of it, they say we're the ones that judge ourselves. That's where they come off. You're your worst critic,
I have
and
that wrote down, do
yeah,
your loved ones judge you? And I say no. And
no, not at all.
no, they're not up there judging you. They're up there guiding you and helping you.
Hmm.
But they're for you, right? They're not
Yeah.
against you.
No, they never are. It's a misconception sometimes, and some dioceses different from everybody else. But like you said, spiritualism is the biggest thing because it's acceptance of all things. We're that spirit, we're that Godhead, that Mother, Father, God. We're that energy that's in there with the universe. So we're all connected like stars in the universe. We're all from the
It's
same
beautiful, a
place.
big web, and we're all connected.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's why I like to tell people really think about how you're never alone. I tell people all the time, you might feel lonely, but you're never alone,
Hmm. Laws of the universe. You're never allowed to be alone.
right? And then when we go to heaven, we get this new perspective in heaven, right? Of
Hmm.
everything that happens, life and
Oh,
death.
absolutely, yeah. People are surprised and they find out that their uncle, their so and so, they have work to do over there. I remember sitting in the hot tub of all places, and Samuel says to me, decides to have a conversation about guilt. He said, "Would you do me a favor and remind people that when they're in the physical, to deal with their guilt here in the physical? That way, they don't have to carry it with them over the other side." He said, "That's where the judgment comes in from any guilt that you have." He said, "Work it out here." He said, "That way, when you cross over, it's a lot easier for you. You don't have to hold on to it. And that's what you learn to let go of on the other side."
Yeah, we really kind of want to work whatever we can through things in this lifetime and not bring them to the higher side of life, right, Gordon?
Exactly. Yeah.
So if you have something, it's good to work through it, especially if there's some unforgiveness there.
Yeah. And the forgiveness is about ourselves, is not forgiving or forgetting what's happened in the situation and circumstances, but forgiving ourselves to hold on to that anger or hold on to that guilt, whatever it may be.
And
And
those
that's what
are only
that's
things that are hurting your soul.
exactly,
Give
exactly.
the gift to yourself of not holding on to anger or having a guilt,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, and it's so easy to pick up. A lot of people don't realize how sensitive they are psychically connected. When they pick up that and they hold on, they're like, "How do I let that go?" You just forgive and forget. And it's
That brings me to the question of, especially when you do this work, and guys, I'm so sorry. I can hear my little dog barking, so you probably can too. And she's never done this, so I don't know what her problem is. But um, that comes to a question of, especially when you do this work, you're sensitive. You're
Mhm.
you might be just really sensitive. A lot of people are, and that's how we get our feelings hurt. Talk about that, Gordon.
Yeah, when you come into a space, when you come into a space and someone's been arguing and asking if anything's all right, they say, "No, no, everything's fine." Because you can feel that energy that's there, and it's an energy which teach my students. I say, when you have that energy and you're reading for somebody, you have to realize where it belongs. If it belongs over there and it's with that, don't take it as yours. Don't own it, because all of a sudden you'll be carrying it and you won't know why. And 3 hours later, you'll be feeling like something's wrong and you don't know where it's coming from. So understand where the emotion belongs to, who it belongs to. If it's not yours, then you don't have to worry about it. And that's where a lot of people getting into this type of work when they're not sure what to do with the feelings they have. Sometimes it's overwhelming. When you're talking about a loved one that's passed and the loved one's there and they're crying because they're so happy they can get that information, because our service with spirit first and always with spirit, right?
Mm.
And in that, that can become so overwhelming that sometimes people even want to just walk away from it because they think they're being possessed, which it never happens.
Not possessed, but do you believe that we can be surrounded by an entity here and there that can kind of
Mhm.
direct our thoughts? Because it's happened
Absolutely.
to me, Gordon.
Yep.
I
Absolutely.
didn't think it could. And I went to a birthday party that my friend was throwing for her husband, and it was in a bar, and there was drinking and drugs,
Oh, yeah.
yucky music playing. And I walked out of there with a different attitude.
Hmm.
And 3 days later, Spirit said to me that those aren't your thoughts. You need
Yeah.
a meditation where I bring in Archangel Michael and he cuts the
Hmm.
cords. I actually saw a person get ripped out of my energy field.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of people don't like to talk about that or think that that can happen, but believe me, I'm a teetotaler, and if that can happen, you want
Yeah.
to stay in the light, but things like that can happen, right?
I've had people, I have friends that work in, I call it the elevator where it's, from 0 to 12. Some work in the darker things, some work in the middle, some work with just angels, and me to Lorraine Warren and, talk about her experience and stuff. There are things I've gone through personally, which people will say, I don't think that's real, but it happened. And I can't say it didn't happen because it did happen to me, you know and yeah, you can pick up those things there. So you got to be careful, especially like when you go into antique stores. I don't go into antique stores for that reason. I don't like picking up things, right? But yeah, it can happen. But like you said, if you recognize where the emotion, the mood comes from, then you have a better idea to say, okay, this only happened when I was at that place with Bonnie, and I picked it up from there. So it's not mine, right? And like I said, meditation is a beautiful way to do that with the archangels, and like James did the shower with the mirrors facing outwards and just clearing it all out. You know, it's a
I love
mind.
taking a shower, just like just washing off all the energy, and it's about having intention with that.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Yes.
intention
Yeah.
of getting everyone's energy and clearing your own, right?
Intention's a big thing. Yeah, intention's a big thing because you just can't go through the motion of it. You can't just like smudge thing and do it. There's got to be an intention to it. The energy has to move, right?
Yes, yes. And I always tell everyone, your prayers are heard. So your prayers are an intention as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so whatever your intention is, what you're carrying around.
Absolutely.
But because everybody is sensitive to some degree, I just like them to know sometimes those thoughts or those feelings aren't yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Doing this work, sometimes we're so sensitive we can get our feelings hurt very easily.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where I tell people, when they take my classes, don't stop here. Don't stop here. This is a bridge. Go somewhere else and learn. Learn as much as you can. Even people I know that had experience doing things, I always come to James. I don't tell people I'm his student. I've been doing this his house. So I tell them I'm brand new. I don't know it's the first time meeting James. Until James says, Gordon, get up on stage. I'm like, oh, come on, really? I'm trying to hide here, you know?
There's
But the
no
thing is,
hiding, Gordon.
yeah, yeah, just a little bit, just a little bit. But yeah, it's just one of those things, and you'll get used to it. You'll get used to how to deliver, how to deal with it, how to recognize it, and talking to other mediums as well helps as well. You know what I mean?
It's about being knowledgeable a little bit
Yes,
that can happen to you.
yes, yeah.
Um,
Just don't throw it away if you can't. Yeah.
so just learn about clearing your energy, whatever way that happens for you.
Hmm.
Right?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
want to talk about kind of switch the gears here and talk about something a little fun, or I
Okay.
think it's fun. So I know that you're clairvoyant as well, right? Clear
Yes, ma'am.
seeing. So I get asked a lot, what do souls look like?
Our souls look like an energy. They don't look when I see people, I can see people as I'm looking at you. When I see spirits, most times when the spirits are looking, they're talking about looking at us. They see energy around us. They don't see us with a shirt, and they see an energy light. And it's almost like the aura. Well, Sylvia Brown, when I used to work with her, she'd say, if you see auras, you need your eyes checked. And I said, well, not everybody sees auras,
Yeah,
right? Everybody has the same gift.
but I don't see them. I do see clairvoyantly, and sometimes,
Exactly.
inside my third eye, and sometimes outside. But I get so jealous that I don't see colors around people.
Hmm.
Or
And it's not hard to learn.
yeah,
It's not hard to learn. And Mavis Patilla was a great one for telling me that. And she says, look at the trees and watch the trees. Look around the trees. You'll start from there, and then start with colors.
they'll
Right?
teach me that at night too. The trees are alive. The trees,
Yep.
but people ask me, Bonnie, how can my loved one, come to you and you can describe them to a T in what they're wearing?
Hmm.
And that's because I like to say when we go to heaven, we bring all of us to heaven, right? Our personalities, what we
Absolutely.
were, how we talked, we're still us, right?
Hmm.
So a lot of people from heaven that come in, sometimes they can appear younger as opposed to
Yes.
older.
Yes. Yeah, many times I've had grandma come when she was 17 years old, and she passed when she's 92, and they can't understand how come she's 16 or 17, or like that's the age they get to choose. Most of the age on the other side is about 29, 30 years of age. Older folks, in my experience, a lot of them come to me as little children
Oh,
because it was a playful age. They weren't hindered by anything, and there's just so much that they can just kind of let go of everything, right? And they do have that opportunity to do that. If you see the movie with What Dreams May Come, it's a great example of a
I
movie.
love that movie. Remember that,
Yes,
guys, What Dreams May Come with Robin Williams.
yes,
That's
yes.
a beautiful story of
It's a great example. Exactly when his daughter, when she came as for those who've never seen, I'm sorry, but as an older woman, and she appears back as her age when she passed away, and they do that.
I always say your loved one's coming in a little younger here. I know they pass when they're 80, but they're even sometimes they'll even come like 30, 40, 50, and
Yeah.
I can feel what age they're coming through.
Hmm.
They'll tell me that's when I felt my best on earth. Or
Yes.
they were missing a leg, but now they're not. So they come in dancing, and I'm just like, oh,
Yeah.
right? They're trying to show us that whatever happened here in this lifetime, that now they are whole and they are happy. But when I'm doing events or whatever, I'm always saying, if a medium sees me once I'm gone, she's going to see me in a bikini because I haven't been able to wear one in a long, long time. And it makes everyone laugh. But that's kind
Right.
of how it works, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Humor is the best thing in here because it has to be a light environment. It's not always about the heavy stuff. You can get quite into some heavy stuff there, right?
As a demonstrating medium a little, when you can have fun with someone in the spirit world because they're coming in having fun with you,
Yeah.
they want to bring the vibration up. They will. It's not always so sad, and then there are times where it's just completely sad, and that's
Hmm.
okay. It's good to have a mixture in there.
Yeah, it is because sometimes the emotion's not hidden. I remember doing a reading, and it was really weird for things that happened. I'd had a month of readings with just kids who passed over, little kids who passed over, and I remember the father came with the mother, and she dragged him, and you could tell she dragged him, and he wasn't interested whatsoever, and he sat down, and I said, I have a little boy here, and I was explaining about his pajamas and everything else, and the one thing I said, there's a little hockey stick. Every Canada plays hockey, right? But there's a little hockey stick. But you put it up recently, yesterday, and he just lost it. He said, "How do you know?" He said, "I was waiting for my son." I get emotional thinking about it. But it
Okay.
was, it was so nice because it hit him so good in his heart, so it helped him heal. So those hard times sometimes they're a great healing process.
Absolutely. I bet we both experience people, crying, but crying's a release and it's
Yeah.
healing. Again, the work that we do is healing for people.
Hmm.
I also say it's healing for the people on the other side too, because
Yes.
when they come through and you're a voice, the medium is a voice for them, and
Hmm.
they get to express what they want to express.
Yeah.
I just think that's healing as well too.
It's a nice whole round because you get it too.
Yeah. So I love one gallery I was doing a while ago, and I had a lady just stand there, and she really wasn't having fun, but her husband came through and he was cracking me up, which is true. And so he said to me, I love giving really nice presents. And I said to the lady, so your husband's telling me he loved to give you nice presents. And she's going like this. And then the husband said to me, acknowledge the necklace. And I went, so is that necklace a present from your husband? And she's like, Hmm. And he said, Bonnie, have her show you her earrings. And so I went like this and I said, and how about these? And they were big diamonds, Gordon. They were big.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm like, and your husband gave you these too? And she's like, mm-hmm. And I go, and you didn't think he was good at giving gifts? And everybody was cracking up because she
Yeah.
was just trying to be stoic, but her husband was being so funny. But he was calling her out. It was kind of,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah. And sometimes people are nervous, because they're not
they
sure
do.
what the
They
crowd's
get
thinking
nervous,
too, right?
especially when they have to stand up in front of everyone. And
Yeah, absolutely.
but I love it when someone in the spirit world comes through and they're joyous, they're having fun, you know.
Yeah.
But they get their point across that they're watching over them, and
Hmm.
I'm sure you do this in the end too, Gordon. We have to give the evidence, right? But
Yes.
then there's always a beautiful message that
Oh,
follows.
absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because you know what the thing is, when we're serving spirit, they're taking the time out to get connected with the medium, and they get connected, get so excited, and we feel that excitement. So many times, James, I remember telling him, Gordon, slow down, but I feel like an auctioneer because it's just coming out so fast, you know, and it's that excitement that you feel, so you have to kind of lower it down a bit, but yeah, you get some of those people, they're just, they're not sure, and then they go home, they get the aha moment, like, oh my gosh, I remember that. And she said this. I'm like, why didn't I not say anything? You know what I mean? Right? Yeah.
Yeah. I truthfully always believe the spirit world though. Like I know what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing, and so I just give it, right? Like that
Hmm.
supposed to just spit it out, but it always hits home. Sometimes people after will say, "Oh, Bonnie, you remember when you said that?" And I was like, "Well, this happened the day after."
Wow. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, and they're like, you're really good. And I'm like, nope, it's not me. I'm just listening, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we see people that look like themselves coming through. They might
Hmm.
be older, they might be younger, but they can show us what they look like so that we can give that evidence, right?
Right.
But what happens when we see a flash of light like an orb, Gordon?
Well, for me, when I see flashlight, sometimes a flashlight, I call it a bendy flashlight, and I know there's an angel present when that happens. And it's almost like they open a veil between this world and that world, and you get this glimpse just off the corner of your eye that's in there. And we have to understand that we're not the physical beings that we are there, we're energy. So our soul is moving, it could be this big, it could be this big, it could be this big, and we have the opportunity to move and raise that vibration. And I've had people ask me if you can see him in the daytime. I don't go to my friend used to do a lot of haunted investigation. I don't go because I see him in the daytime anyway, so it's not a big deal to me. But what's really interesting is when I get pictures and I get orbs that are like orange and they're in the middle of the old fort or somewhere else, and how people, they wonder, well, how can that be an orb? How can that be a person? Because we have to go back to understand what we hear in the physical, it makes nonsense to us. But in spirit, we're energy. It's all we are. Yeah.
So, I love when people send me in pictures of orbs and things. And I learned a long time ago to take that picture, if that comes to my phone, and blow the orb up with my fingers. And a lot
Hmm.
of times you can see faces.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I started teaching people, look, do that yourself, people. Blow up that picture, especially if you've got that beautiful ball of light. Just really try to see inside that ball of light.
Hmm.
Um, so one gentleman that came to me said, Bonnie, you need to see this angel. I've got a picture of this angel. And he handed me his phone, and it was a big ball of light. And I took my fingers, Gordon, and I blew it up. And I go, this is a man with two dogs in a boat. And he took it back and he looked at it and he goes, that's my dad. And that's my
Yeah.
two dogs that just passed because they were on thin ice.
Yeah.
And it had just happened. So, what was happening? His dad was letting him know, I have your dogs. They're
Hmm.
okay.
Yeah,
But you really can see amazing things if you can
absolutely.
capture an orb. And
Yeah.
it might be an angel as well. But
Hmm.
I love that. So
And there's things like the obvious you have to look out for, for doing photography and stuff, the light shadow, light cast and stuff like that, clouds in the sky, your brain does certain things, right? But like you said, when you blow it up, there's more to it. I remember I was downstairs and I had a cabinet set up. Cabinet, for those who understand, it's a mediumship events mediumship stage. And I remember talking to spirit, and I would see the orbs come out from underneath the cabinet, the blanket, that was up there. Orbs have a direction where dust doesn't. Dust kind of blows, but orbs will go like this, and they have a direction to them. You know, and with myself, I'm able to see orbs, but I see them in colors. I see them in colors, which is really neat. Sometimes blue, sometimes like a pink or a red. And red doesn't mean it's bad. Everybody thinks the color is bad, but no, not at all.
no bad colors. Yeah, someone sent me a picture of a blue orb, and I did the same thing. And I opened it up, and it was a little dog. And I go, "There's a little tiny dog in here." And she's like, "That's my dog that I had since I was little," and it was like a Pomeranian or something.
Wow.
But that one came through blue. So I'll tell you, Gordon, how I knew orbs were real, though, because I love how the spirit world teaches me so much.
Hmm.
I was being kind of bratty because I had my phone like this and I'm going through my house and people send me questions in for my columns and it was about orbs, orbs, orbs. And I went, orbs, orbs, orbs. And then in the corner of my room, there was two big round orbs and I was like this. And the
Wow.
first orb came down and it broke open and it was my mother's face. The second one was right behind her, broke open, and it was my father's face.
No kidding.
And
That's
I
awesome.
knew they were having fun with me, like, hey, Bonnie, orbs are real. This is energy. We're in here. Um,
Hmm.
that's how they taught me, and that was just a few years ago when it was COVID. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing what when you're ready, the steps that the spirit world saying you as a medium or advanced developing psychic, how they can bring you through those folds. And so, okay, look at this now. People say, well, I can't believe until I see it. And I tell people I'm a very skeptic medium. I'm very skeptical, and that's James' fault because the evidence you have to have, all the other stuff goes with it. But you know what? If you give yourself the opportunity not be so closed, you may be privy to see what you've seen. You know what I mean? And I tell people all the time,
Absolutely.
don't
You gotta be
stop,
open,
learn.
you know.
Yeah.
Even I went, but for and then my mom and dad, they were both had big smiles on their face, like, haha, we're
Yeah.
but the spirit world is always trying to give everyone signs, whether they're
Hmm.
teaching you something or they're guiding you or they're trying to show you a message in some way, right, Gordon?
Right, right, absolutely. And people, well, I had a woman come to me and said, my mom's a bird. She kind of said, your mom's not a bird. She's sending the bird.
I get that too. I'm
She's
sorry to
not a
laugh.
bird.
I'm not laughing at that. Some people really think that
Absolutely.
we say cardinals are around you or
Hmm.
the spirit world can send one to you or
Absolutely.
cardinals are God's messengers. But yeah, your parents didn't turn into birds. But
Right, right.
yeah, so I
Eh,
always I always gently smile and say, no, that's your dad sending you that card.
yes, yeah. And it's nice to think about that because that's what they think. Okay, that's my mom's, and butterflies and such, and they're wonderful concept to understand that it's being sent from spirit. They're sending that to you, you know,
Absolutely. And
and,
it's
and
a
it's
big
nice.
sign. It really is, guys. I just had to put down my cat of 17 years.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Believe me, I left crying. I don't even know how I drove home. But a cardinal flew right when I was pulling into my driveway, right by my windshield, like this, went like this. I don't even know why I didn't hit it. And then it flew right beside me. And what was that? That was a sign, we're with you, we're with you. They
Hmm.
Spirit knows when you're having a hard time.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. And it's, it's nice to let go of the fact that all that's just coincidence. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as coincidence. It's always involved with spirit. We're
Yeah.
so close to the veil. People, I remember being in church when I was a kid, and I couldn't figure out why people kept looking up. I'm that way. They like the architecture, and I would see a lady over the side, and she's passed away, and heaven's this high off the ground. It's not that far. It's
It's
not that far.
just all around us,
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely, and it's a beautiful place. I'll tell you, it's a wonderful place. Experiencing it, past when I was a kid and when I was a little older. It's just there's no word that we have in our English language or any language in the physical that can, allude to how wonderful that is.
Heaven.
Yeah.
I like to do this work so much, Gordon, is also to show people that there's no death.
No, not
Your
at
loved
all.
one can come through like that, and there's really no death. But we miss them. We
Hmm.
when we miss people's physical presence.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it's easy for us to say we see your mom and dad have the presence when someone's there they can't physically see them. And someone asked me, how come you can see my mother? Just a long conversation. How come you see my mother and I can't? I said, well, I asked Samuel. I said, Samuel. I said, how is that? He said, well, if we're able to have their mother pop up in front of them, that's almost like losing them twice. And sometimes the human emotion can't hold on to that anguish, right? So we bring it to them and deliver it differently. So we bring the evidence, we bring the facts, we bring the memories, so they can share, because there's a perfect stranger that share memories that I have no clue what they're talking about. And they're like, how did you know? Well, because they're here telling me, you know. And sometimes they'll say, I want to touch my daughter on the shoulder, and they'll do that.
Yeah, and that really leaves them to believe because we know nothing about who's coming through or what they're going to say.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
I always say we should be the nervous ones because they're just the voice or whatever. We never know what's going to happen during a reading, do we, Gordon?
No, not at all. Yeah,
Or what they're going to say or what evidence they're going to bring through. I'm always like, hey, we're on the chopping board here. And they're like,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. The way they deliver it.
We love everyone and we want to provide some healing and some hope and some faith to everyone.
Yeah, and help them cross over, knowing that there's a life still. It's not ending here.
Yeah. So Gordon, what would you like to leave everyone today with? A little bit, whatever, just say a few words of what you'd like people to take into their heart.
I think the most thing is about self forgiveness. Forgive yourself for things that you can't control or you can't change, or things that you've done. We make decisions when you're younger. We're not so wise at the time, and it's okay to be human. And we're, like you said, we're humans having spiritual beings having a human experience, and our humanness. That's all that stays here. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. That's what that means. And we go on the other side. We don't have to carry that with us no more. So give yourself a break. Give yourself a break. It's not easy. We're here to learn lots. That's what we're here for. That's our mandate.
It's
Learn lots.
easy, but those are beautiful words. Be easier on yourself, and we're not
Yes.
supposed to be perfect.
No, we're not made that way.
As good as we can, but we're not perfect. I'm not perfect. It's you know, so
Hmm.
beautiful. I think you're perfect, Gordon. I
I appreciate that, love.
my mom's maiden name was Gordon, so I
Nice.
love even saying that. Gordon, tell people how they can find you as a medium, your website or your Facebook page. How can people reach out to you, Gordon?
I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. Mostly posting on Instagram about motorcycles. I love motorcycle. But my webpage, it's www.gordonellison.com. You can reach me at my email at gellison121@gmail.com as well.
Great. I thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, it was a pleasure being on here. I miss you so much.
I apologize. I can hear my dog digging at the door. Yeah. I gotta find a place for her to go when I do these, I guess. I left for like 3 or 4 days and she got really like, oh, like,
Yeah, yeah, they get
gosh, I
sensitive.
need my mom here. So, but thank you so much, Gordon.
You're very welcome.
I enjoyed it, and I hope you'll come back and do this again.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, everyone, for watching, and we'll see you next time. As you're watching this podcast, stay tuned for the next one. And God bless everyone. God bless.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you, Jordan.
See you later.